Today in the Menowave Lounge, Robin and I are sitting down to tackle some of the biggest questions we've been hearing in the menopause support group on Facebook. You know how menopause can feel like a roller coaster? Well, we've brought in 3 amazing Menowave care provider experts to help us figure it all out. From the real deal about hormone replacement therapy to how what we can eat can affect everything from our mood to our waistline. It's like a cozy chat with friends who just happen to have all the answers. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and join us. This is one conversation you won't want to miss.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Menowave Lounge, hot flashes and cool conversations. Today, we have some amazing guests to share in many of the questions that we have been asked over the past year since we started our podcast. And we're going to bring all these beautiful ladies together and we're going to answer some questions and have this really great conversation.
Yes, I am super excited to welcome into the Menowave Lounge. First guest is Jennifer Gilliland. She is a registered dietitian and therapist. And by the way, we have met with all of these lovely care providers before, so go back and make sure to check out the podcast where we get to learn all about them and hear their messages. Next, we have Dr. Manon Fielding. She is a menopause and anti-aging coach. Glad to have you, Manon. And last, we have Vanessa Weiland. She was just on a couple of weeks ago, and she is back for more. She is a nurse practitioner, clinical hypnotherapist, and a Menopause Society certified practitioner. Very excited to welcome the 3 of you to the Menowave Lounge, and we're just going to dive right in. Okay, so the first topic that we'd like to talk about is the medicalization of menopause in America. And Dr. Manon, since you were the one to suggest this topic, I'm going to start with the first question for you. There are many narratives surrounding menopause, some viewing it as a natural phase of life and others seeing it as a condition requiring treatment. How do you think these narratives have evolved over time, and what impact do you think that they have on women's experiences today?
This is a really, really good topic because when I look back, when I started studying menopause, when I was going through menopause myself and now have been working with a lot of menopause clients, I look back over history and I realize that women are always the experiment where they experiment on lobotomies or there's something wrong with you in menopause. So they give you all kinds of laudanum was something that they gave women that were experiencing especially the psychological, but also the physical symptoms of menopause back in the 1800s, I believe it was. And many of them got addicted, surprisingly enough, right? Giving them drugs, opium and laudanum. And it really just never got a whole lot better for many, many years. And now there is the medicalization, which I don't have anything, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with HRT. I'm just saying that the way that it's promoted is that if you don't do this, you're not doing the right thing for yourself. And there's no other options. It's always making it seem like there's no other options when there are societies all over the world that use no medications and do 10 times better than we do. So it's just understanding that it is a natural phase of life and that you do have options. And I just did a webinar on estrogenic foods. And that is one option, that you can use estrogenic foods the way they do in Asia and other countries. And so I pointed out all the options, the different types of phytoestrogens, what they each do. And in combination, they actually are pretty powerful in addition to many other options. So I think the important thing is that women do need to understand that they don't have to be dependent on that pharmaceuticals, that they do have options.
Thank you for that, Dr. Manon. Speaking of pharmaceuticals companies, as you know, they often promote treatments for menopause, influencing perceptions and decision. Vanessa, how do you think women should approach the information and options available regarding hormones, therapies, and the other treatments?
Yeah, I think what Dr. Manon is saying is so true, that we went through a long phase, maybe 20 years, where hormone therapy was like, the worst thing in the world. And then in that time, some reevaluation of the old studies has happened and some new research has happened where we're thinking, well, maybe this isn't so bad. Maybe in some ways it can help your health. But then perhaps the dial has started to go too far to the other side where, like you say, some people are starting to feel like, oh, if I don't do it, then I'm going to die early or I'm going to have heart disease. And I think that there are a lot of ways to manage menopause without hormone therapy. I do think that it's totally reasonable if you're wanting to pursue it for preventative health based on the research that exists. But right now, none of the societies are saying we ought to be doing that for everyone.
That's really interesting analysis of the history and versus the education that we're getting today and the treatment options that are now available. And I just want to go to this one piece around nutrition, because Dr. Manon, you had mentioned estrogen foods. That helps us in our dietary needs, and that is so powerful. And I wanted to just get Jennifer's comment on that, because she's a registered dietitian, talking about how we can get more of these natural remedies through our food and different ways of our lifestyle. What do you think, Jennifer?
Yeah, I always say that nutrition is the foundation of everything. It really is the building block to everything else that we do. It affects our emotional state. It affects our, our risk of chronic disease like, diabetes and heart disease and that type of a thing. And it's a very personal situation as well. It can be a very vulnerable conversation for women because there's a lot of tradition. There's a lot of kind of expectation when it comes to some of those nutrition practices. And so when we're talking in the menopause stage of life, we're talking about making some changes that, if we have a goal of whether that's weight loss or decreasing bloating or decreasing belly fat or whatever our kind of front and center type of thing that we're looking at is, when we start talking about food and what needs to change, or maybe some choices that we need to make, that can affect how our family interaction is. It can affect how we typically celebrate with food, or sometimes we're using food in a kind of more of a soothing way. And so we have to really think about, we have these foods that are recommended that are maybe healthier choices for us that are going to support our bodies, and that's great, and I'm all for that. But we also have to understand, what are we asking people to do, and does that challenge mean that it's almost less helpful for us? So I was talking to a client the other day, and we were talking about, keeping blood sugars where they needed to be. And there was such an insistence from the provider about the blood sugar has to be a certain number. And I don't disagree, but the stress that was put on this particular client, because she felt like she was doing something wrong or something bad because she just wasn't able to achieve that with food alone. There were, cortisol levels and inflammation and that whole kind of line of conversation. I think it's really important that we're really understanding where people are coming from with the food choices, and how does that impact them positively and negatively, and how can we help navigate that in a way that makes sense for them, that is doable, and they can consistently, show up in a way that helps them to feel their best, for sure.
It's so good. That is very, very true. I mean, when you live in the South and people are so dedicated to their sweet tea and their, certain foods that, like you said, they're just part of the culture. You have to do things very slowly, right? I mean, you can tell them what might help them and let them start making the choices. And the more we give them the power and empower them to make the choices themselves, the more likely they are to make those choices. So I think that's a really good point, Jennifer.
Yeah, I agree so much, because it comes back, circling back around to education, and how do we get good education out there so women can be empowered to make good decisions about their health, because it's not a one size fits all kind of treatment. And the more that the more that you can start building that balance in your life, so that you can manage menopause symptoms, and they don't have to be detrimental to your lifestyle every day. You can be happy, successful, and still go through menopause. So yeah, I think it really is about bringing that education, and that's why we're all here. Jennifer, what is the biggest challenge for women going through menopause when it comes to their changing bodies, like the minnow belly and sudden weight gain, because we hear a lot about that, is that this stubborn weight that just won't come off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a conversation that I have with women daily. I think it goes back to really helping women to trust their own instinct in a lot of ways and really understand what makes them feel the best that they want to feel. You know, what kinds of changes need to come about, whether that's from an emotional standpoint, if it's different types of foods that they need to incorporate or eliminate or, you know, really pay more attention to. But I often talk to women about really understanding from the inside, what is it that you need? What do we need to really promote and encourage on the inside so that the outside can change? Because weight changes are really a reflection of how we're doing emotionally and from a deeper level than just calories and macros. I tell people I'm more than happy to talk about that. I'm more than happy to give you the list of the protein, foods and all of that kind of thing, but that's information. But when we don't own it on the inside, we're not going to be willing to implement that. So I have clients who, for good or not good, they have somebody in their life that is offering a donut or they're offering pop, and they're all these things that they're trying to look at a little bit closer and maybe make some changes with. And it becomes a really difficult conversation because they're having to hold firm in who they are and what their goal is, at the same time that they really want that donut. And there's nothing wrong with eating a donut. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. But we have to think about how does that fit into what our goals are and where we want to be. And there's I always talk about, the difference between where we were and where we are, and then where we want to be. And we're so focused on where we're not. And so especially when we're talking about weight loss, I can't lose the 20 pounds. I can't lose the 10 pounds. I've gained 100 pounds, whatever that number is. We look at that number instead of, oh my goodness, we've made such great changes and momentum with getting out and taking a walk, getting the sleep that we need, really being able to prepare food, actually getting back to cooking food instead of going out for fast food. We've made a lot of really positive changes, but we're not where we want to be. So we tend to think of all the things we don't have yet instead of the things that we have been able to make changes to. And it's those incremental steps that get us that long-term success. But we all see the bright and shiny, quick fixes, and we want the quick fix. And this is a journey. This menopause, whether it's perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause, it is a journey, and we are in it, and we have to ride the wave, through that entire experience. It's a wonderful, opportunity to get to know what our bodies need. But when we just look at those calories and just look at the scale, we oftentimes are missing that bigger picture.
I agree with you 100%, Jennifer, because I'm looking back and thinking of, the clients that I've worked with as well. I mean, especially when you say celebrating those wins, celebrating those incremental steps of like, well, listen, I went for my walk today and I had vegetables today and I passed on the donut today, but I know I could have the donut tomorrow. Even just when you feel into that, it just feels so much better when we're on this journey. Like you said, it's day to day, to keep us from beating ourselves up because we're not the shiny object yet. We all want to have that end goal, right? I don't know if it's human nature or what, to just want to beat ourselves up because we're not there yet. And I think a lot of that comes with is a lot of shame that we, for whatever reason, we're not where we want to be. And one of the points that I always like to make is, you know what? Look at your life. What was important? Like we can only have so many balls up in the air that we can really focus on. And like when my mom died, I couldn't focus on making sure I went doing all these other things for my health that maybe I did before she passed away. It didn't mean that I didn't go back to it or that I didn't need to go back to it. But in that moment, it was more important for me to grieve and to get through that. Same thing when my house burned down. Just getting up the next day and getting my life back, that was the priority right now. And I can forgive myself for that. And that's what I like to tell my clients too, is, forgive yourself for that and then come back around. What is more important? Okay, now I want to focus on our health. It's more apparent. And now we know maybe it's more of a priority than it was 5 years ago. And health doesn't always mean losing weight, but I think for a lot of us, obviously that does factor in. And we are talking about weight loss. Vanessa, can our cortisol levels, I saw this in the group, which is why I brought it up. Can our cortisol levels ever be too high to make weight loss possible? And if so, what do we do about it?
Yeah, there's actually a medical condition. If you have cortisol that's too high, it can cause high blood sugar and changes in your body physique and weight gain around the middle. So I think a lot of us aren't to that point where we have that medical condition, but we might be higher than optimal. I mean, cortisol is important and we wouldn't survive without it either. But there can be too much of a good thing, certainly. And who isn't stressed in this day and age, right? So I think we can all take a little time to try to cool down the temperature and recenter ourselves and see if that helps to quell some of the extra stress and anxiety that can sometimes feed into the stubborn weight gain.
That's a very good point, Vanessa. Dr. Manon, can you speak to the stress and weight gain, how those two interact? Because we deal with stress every day, and how does that affect our eating?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to mention real quick as I'm listening to all of you amazing coaches is that what we're talking about in terms of talking to these clients and what helping them take steps towards these things, that is one of the most important parts of what we're doing, because yes, a lot of people can do it on their own, but many of us need help and somebody to tell us, oh, look at, like you were saying, look at where you've come from, look where you are, look how much you've accomplished. That stress-wise is amazingly effective. That's one thing that we can do to help our clients reduce stress, is by acknowledging all of their little wins. And that really just helps them love themselves more. So loving yourself helps reduce that stress, and recognizing their value and who they are. Then the next time they have to make that choice, they're much more likely to make the healthy choice that we taught them, because they realize it just gives them that confidence. You know what I mean? And I think that that is a big part of it. In terms of stress reduction, there are many different avenues of stress reduction. And I think when I work with clients, I like to give them options. These are all different things. Let's choose at least two of them that you can start doing. And exercise wise, I talk about it. Yeah, it's okay to run and get your energy out, but that actually hypes up your body. With exercise, I want them to choose one exercise that is calm, Tai Chi or yoga or breathing, and work on that. I also definitely recommend certain supplements like ashwagandha. I've seen that work amazingly well for almost every client that is under a lot of stress, having anxiety, depression, and difficulty making good choices. The ashwagandha just helps you feel better about yourself in a way that I have not found anything else do quite that much with one. It's kind of amazing. I started that when I was in menopause, and I still take it now.
Yeah, I take the ashwagandha as well. And I do believe that there are really good supplements that we should be taking on a daily basis. Now, what those are individual to everybody. I did want to comment on the one part about stress, and because one of the things that I talk to my clients about is how to build tools in their toolbox every day that they can use when they are having dialogue with themselves, that internal conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think that we don't recognize enough of what we're talking to ourselves about. Mm-hmm. And so many times we have these negative conversations that we don't even realize that we're having with ourselves. And to shine a light on that inner critic, to bring to light, oh my gosh, I just said some terrible things to myself. How can I turn that around? Or why am I talking to myself like that? Why am I beating myself up today about it? So how can I turn that around with a positive statement, changing the environment, changing the vibration that's around us? I mean, sometimes that's just going out, taking a walk outside for 5 minutes, breathing in some fresh air, doing some deep breathing exercise, coming back in, and that can just turn around that perspective or that old conversation. So just building tools in your toolbox every day so that you can, number one, start recognizing what's going on inside of yourself, that you can start giving yourself love, and you can start talking to yourself in a positive way, and you can start sharing, look at the positive things, like Marti said, that you've done instead of the negative things that you haven't done. And sometimes it's only one day. And guess what? Tomorrow you get another free day to come together, talk to yourself, make better decisions. So, it takes a lot of that internal, external, the different pieces, health, diet, and mental, spiritual, to create a healthy, balanced lifestyle.
I wanted to say what Coach Robin said about the internal, that awareness, that one single thing is really the starting point of change. And that's very powerful.
It is just acknowledging what we're talking about to each other. So
right.
That's good.
Yeah, I think if I can just add one more thing about that internal trust, helping clients to really challenge them to take what they believe as truth and not always have to look outside for outside validation. Because when we own it, like we're talking about, when we own it and we can make those choices, because we're not with clients when they're having to decide between, this food and whether or not I move my body today and how much sleep am I going to get. They have to feel empowered to make those choices. And I feel like when we as coaches and care providers are supporting them in the best way possible, we're helping them to really come into their own power about that. And there's a lot of traction that can happen when we start to really hone in on that, because once they trust themselves, they're unstoppable. It's crazy the momentum that they can build with that.
Absolutely. Because they're not with their coaches, they're not with us when we're out, but they could be with their own best friend. And to start looking at yourself as your own best friend,
100%.
we're much more likely to make the better choices, or to encourage us to, like, hey, this is what we want to do. If we love ourselves enough, and if we're celebrating our steps and giving ourselves grace along the way, much more likely to stick to what we want to do to improve, than if we're constantly going back to beating ourselves up over the head, or doubting ourselves, or thinking, oh, I'm doing this wrong, or I shouldn't be thinking this, or shouldn't be thinking that. That just inside, I can just feel it in my stomach. It's just, like punishment and doubt and negativity, thinking of ourselves as our own best friend. Thank you for that, ladies. Jumping on to our next topic. Vanessa, I see so many women in the group saying that they don't believe that they're a candidate for menopause hormone therapy. What can you say to that?
Truthfully, the vast majority of women are a candidate for hormone therapy. A lot of people think they're not a candidate because of a family history, and that might be true if it's a genetic issue, but then that's not your family history. That's your own medical history as well. So if your aunt had a blood clot and there's no genetic condition, that doesn't mean you can't have hormone therapy. And there's also, we can also be really thoughtful if you are concerned about blood clot, which hormone therapy we choose, and choosing ones that are less likely to cause a blood clot. Or if there's breast cancer in your family, but there's no genetic condition like BRCA1 or BRCA2, then once again, we can be really thoughtful about which hormone therapy we choose to make that risk as low as possible. So I think that a menopause specialist is a really good resource if you're not sure if you're a candidate or not, because a lot of primary care providers or OBGYNs, even if they are willing to prescribe hormone therapy, they might not be as comfortable going even slightly out of the lines of the ideal candidate. But there are a lot of people that might not be an ideal candidate, but they can still be a candidate for hormone therapy.
Vanessa, so quick question. Now that we're in the age that we are in, there are so many different types of hormone therapies. Can you share a couple of them? I mean, typically we don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Sure.
So there's HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and then BHRT is bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. It's a little bit just of a marketing term, but basically bioidentical means the chemicals in that medicine look exactly like what your body makes. And some people believe that means it'll be accepted better by your body, or be less inflammatory, or less likely to cause breast cancer down the line, things like that. So Both of them can be FDA approved. It doesn't need to be compounded or pellets in order to get the BHRT. If that is something you want to pursue, a menopause specialist can order from your regular pharmacy. It can be run through your insurance. It usually can be quite affordable to do BHRT. But truthfully, so far, there haven't been a lot of studies showing any big difference in the safety from one or the other. So if using one patch that's not bioidentical, but it's easy because it has both medicines you need in it, the estrogen and the progestogen in it. If that's just the easiest thing for your lifestyle, there's no really compelling evidence that you're doing yourself any harm by choosing something that's not bioidentical. So I hope that covers the basics.
I just want to say, there is now research showing that the synthetic progesterone with postmenopausal women can be responsible for some of the negative effects, not the estrogen, apparently. So I do recommend that, for one, using a patch anyway, because then you're not going through your gastrointestinal system and your liver. Two, the progesterone, I do recommend trying natural progesterone, because the synthetic progesterone has been found to have some negative consequences. But the estrogen doesn't seem to do that either way, like Vanessa was saying, whatever kind they use.
Yeah, I agree. When I'm treating someone, I try to start off with the bioidentical progesterone, but some people just don't tolerate it. And I don't want them to think they're out of options at that point. I mean, the safety profile for the synthetic progestins is still great. It's just not maybe quite as good.
So, and there's different ways of taking the HRT, like in a patch, like a tincture. Is that right?
Yeah, it can be pills, patches, creams. There's pellets. Yeah, something under the tongue. There's local estrogen, meaning it's going directly in the genital area and it's not getting absorbed into the bloodstream. So even if you're not a candidate for HRT because of a personal history of breast cancer or blood clot, most often you can safely take that, and that can help with the genital irritation that can come in postmenopause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Jennifer, sorry, I mean, your experience when working with clients that are interested in weight loss, do you see any impact one way or the other if they're on HRT or if they're not?
So I've seen many women talk about both. They'll be on HRT and they'll say that they gained weight. They'll be on HRT and say that they lost weight. So I feel like it's another kind of personal conversation that I tell people all the time. I'm like, I'm neither for or against HRT. I just think we all deserve to have a conversation with our own individual care provider. Like, they know your family history, your genetic history, your personal history, how you feel. There's a lot of commonalities about how people feel, but I think that we can sometimes kind of miss the boat on everybody with menopause doesn't feel the same. You know what I mean? So like, we have to really understand how is it impacting your life? Even hot flashes. I've got people that say they sweat through everything all day long. And then other people that are like, I get one every once in a while. It's not really that bothersome. So, the whole HRT conversation, I think a lot of people wish really strongly that it would cause significant weight loss. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, but I haven't heard anybody say that it's a guarantee by any means. So it's personal experience for sure.
Yeah, if I can speak to the research a little bit, like you said, Jennifer, when you combine all the studies, it's basically a wash. So some people gain weight, particularly if they get bloating, you might gain 2 to 4 pounds, but then it kind of sticks there. And then some people lose weight, but it's not specifically from the hormone therapy. It's the fact that they're sleeping better and their energy's better and they're able to go do the things that they need to do to lose the weight. So it can kind of help with the motivation piece, but it's not all in itself gonna melt the pounds away. But it definitely can help a little bit with the menobelly piece, where you're like noticing your body composition changing, losing some muscle and bone and gaining some weight around the midsection. It can start to reverse that part.
So quick question, and I'm just gonna throw this out. I think, Vanessa, this is probably in your lane. So what kind of symptoms would HRT
it's FDA approved to help with hot flashes, genitourinary syndrome, so that's vaginal dryness, urinary frequency, frequent UTIs. It's really important for bone health. So if you're someone that's high risk for osteoporosis, like you have a family history of osteoporosis or a personal history of osteopenia, you don't need to have any symptoms and you can take hormone therapy strictly to improve your bone health. A lot of people say that it helps with things like their brain fog, their energy, their strength, but it's not FDA approved for those things. I think that the research is still out on those things.
Well, this has just been such a fantastic conversation. As we conclude this episode, I just want to say that my whole understanding of hormone replacement therapy in menopause has evolved since being a part of this group, and definitely since having conversations with other care providers such as you ladies. I went into it being like, I don't know how I feel about it, to really feeling like I have a really good knowledge of what I need and what is safe for me and other alternative treatments that we're going to talk about in this next episode. Dr. Manon, any final thoughts as we conclude this episode?
Yeah, I notice with some women on HRT is that they have this impression that it's going to help them with everything so that they don't have to really change anything else or do anything. And that is really the biggest reason why they gain weight or things, because they've just continued some really bad habits in terms of, I don't have to exercise, I don't have to eat the right foods because I'm on HRT and it solves all my problems. And that is just a kind of common thing. And there are a lot of women who are on HRT that still have a lot of menopause symptoms. So we need to be able to have the conversation about what else is going on there.
I encourage those conversations either with a coach, with your doctor, with somebody that's going to give you good information. That's excellent. Thank you. Jennifer, do you have any final thoughts?
I think along those same lines, a lot of times we feel like there's a stop and a start to this menopause journey. And really, it starts in perimenopause and then it never ends. And that's okay. We can celebrate the fact that we get to learn and challenge and grow and understand, have a deeper understanding each and every day of our own bodies, of the people around us. I really want people to think about that internal drive. What is it that you want? What is it that is going to keep you moving forward? And I think as a coach, my central kind of focus is typically really looking at how can I challenge people's thinking? How can I challenge women to move to that next level? And my job is to challenge that thinking and have you think outside the box a little bit. So what do we need to do to make sure that we're on track? If I'm not helping you to improve, then I'm probably not doing what you're paying me to do. So it's really important to me. I think it's a blessing to be able to work with women in this space because I think it is a relatively new conversation that we're having. And we are over 150,000 women strong in the menopause support group. And I love this podcast for these deeper conversations, these more intimate conversations. So I thank you, Robin and Marti, for allowing this to be a great part of the menopause support group. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Vanessa, how about you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if I could summarize that conversation, I think all of us agree that women should know they have a lot of options and that there's not a right way or a wrong way to do menopause. But I also want to remind you that just because you're born with ovaries doesn't mean you have to suffer. I think there are a lot of ways to feel better during this time. And, you don't have to just hunker down and bear through it.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much. And if you want to hear more from these three ladies, join us next week's episode. We're going to continue this conversation with Dr. Manon, Vanessa, and Jennifer. If you would like to continue a conversation with them one-on-one, check the show notes or the show description, and I'll have the links down there on how you can get in touch with them and ask them any questions that you have.
And I want to mention that we have a Menopalooza retreat coming up November 4th through the 7th in Sedona, Arizona at the Wild Retreat and Spa. And we invite all you ladies that are listening to this podcast, or you have friends, family that you think would benefit from coming and enjoying and listening to all these beautiful experts, come and talk at the convention. It's going to be an amazing time. Lots of wonderful ladies are going to be there, make friends, share, enjoy Sedona. And we have the marble game, which if you go back into our previous podcasts, we'll have that information down below. So please come join us. And thank you for tuning in to the Menowave Lounge, hot flashes and cool conversations.
Thank you for joining us in the Menowave Lounge. If you'd like to connect with Marti, Robin, our guests, or any of our expert Menowave care providers for personalized advice and support, head on over to our website at menowave.org and fill out an assessment that will match you with a provider who knows just how to help. Remember, you don't have to face menopause alone. Our team is here to provide the guidance and care you deserve. So, take that step towards reclaiming your well-being and connect with a Menowave care provider today. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Menowave Lounge, Hot Flashes and Cool Conversations.